And in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello. Welcome to Carrier of His Presence broadcast. My name is Elder Jessie Darrough, and I am excited to share with you some exciting information about a book that I read. Well, actually, I have not completed reading the book, but I was so excited about some of the information in the book that I thought that I would share it on a broadcast. I was watching MSNBC one evening, and there was an African-American gentleman on there named Torrey. And Torrey wrote a book on Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness. And as he began to share narratives from the book, few excerpts, I was so impressed that I ordered his book. As I thumbed through the book, a thought crossed my mind, and I knew that I had to share it on a broadcast. And so a thought that I want you to really ponder today is, who is defining you? Who is defining you? Oftentimes our experience as African Americans have been so traumatic that we tend to allow the trauma of the experience to override who God says we are. And we've taken on, many have taken on a mindset of inferiority and to pull ourselves up by our bootstrings and to make a success of our lives. It seems like there's some type of stigma attached to that among us. When we see someone, an African American who is excelling, when we see an African American who have a business of their own and the Lord have blessed them with wealth, or if it wasn't the Lord, they're blessed with wealth, we tend to stigmatize that person as not being black enough. And that was something that I think Torrey really covered really well in this book. And so I'm going to share a few excerpts from the book, Who's Afraid of Post-Blackness? On page 22, Torrey defined post-blackness as no longer caught up in your own trauma about racism and history of black people in the United States. And when I first heard the first part of that definition, it was like, I tend to get an attitude, and I'm saying no longer caught up in the trauma. I mean, this has been a very traumatic experience, an entire race of people who have been treated as second-class citizens, and all kinds of laws and rules that have helped to perpetuate that system. It was like, I'm saying, you're a young man, where have you been? But I did not finish reading the entire definition. That was my first thought. But he brought clarity to that definition and added, post-blackness is not a disavowal of our history. It is the determination that you are not wearing the trauma of the experience anymore. Now I thought, wow, this is a tall order, and I was so impressed by this young man's confidence. Now, because he's a young African-American male, don't be deceived into believing that his experience is unlike your own. Throughout the book, he have shared some of his experiences, like when he wanted to skydive. Some of his peers said he's acting white. Being encouraged by his parents to excel. He felt the pressure of his peers because he was always misjudged and mischaracterized. And so from that experience, he is encouraging the African American to not wear the trauma of the black experience anymore. And then he adds, and no longer wait for the world to be different to live in so that you can live a more interesting life. Now, those 3 points of view I thought was so powerful. Think for a moment. How many times have you begun to use life as a destination as opposed to a journey? How many times have you viewed life as a destination? When I get there, when the children graduate, when the children get older, when the children start school, when I get a better job. It's like we're living for this elusive tomorrow rather than taking life for a journey as a journey today and enjoying this experience that we call life, and no longer wear like an albatross around our neck the fact that we've been an oppressed people in America. There are successful African Americans in our communities. I believe that success is tied into their ability to modulate. In other words, they can alter, they know how to shift, they know how to go in and out of different situations, know how to fit in and feel comfortable in their skin. And I thought, and Torrey, that's not my a terminology. It was a word that he mentioned in the book that I thought was just so powerful, because if we do not learn how to modulate, if we do not learn how to go into an attorney's office, if we don't know how to go into the schools, if we don't know how to go into citizen meetings, if we do not know how to go into the colleges and leave some of what is not going to work behind, we will not learn how to modulate. So who is defining you? That's an important question. So for the next few weeks, that's what I'm going to be talking about. My first initial response was to do this for Black History, but you know, I just have a passion in my heart for the African American community, that we learn to come up out of the mindset of inferiority. We are a great people, whether we're born again or not. But once we add the Holy Ghost into our lives, that adds to our greatness. And this is not just words. This is a reality that I'm sharing with you that you can embrace for yourself. So again, let's go back over the word post-blackness. Post-blackness is defined as no longer caught up in your own trauma about racism and history of Black people in the United States. Post-blackness is not a disavowal of our history. It is the determination that you are not wearing the trauma any longer. And you are not waiting for the world to be different to live your life in more interesting ways. Then on page 22, Torrey says, if I am confined in my own head. Think about the excuses people use for not rising up and living more fulfilling life. Not allowing the trauma of our experience in America to prevent us from being all that we can be. So he's saying, and I agree, if you are confined, you're confining yourself through your own thoughts. It's just confining yourself in your own head. When I think about who the Lord have made us into, I I've been a firm believer even before I was born again. I felt that I could achieve whatever I put my hands to. I feel that even more so now that I am led by the Spirit of God. I'm also mindful of the fact that the indoctrination that we get in our homes really makes a tremendous difference about our perspectives on who we are, our perspective on feeling confident regardless of who it is that we are talking to. I came from a background of parents who taught us to hold your head up when you were talking with someone. I was raised by parents who pushed us to excel in school. I was raised by parents who sit down with us and went over our schoolwork and who went over our addition and subtraction, and so that we learned early in life how important education is. We learned early in life how important reading and writing is. We learned early in life how important confidence is, self-confidence is. So Touré is saying, in essence, who are you allowing to define you? Because if we don't answer that question, if we do not align our lives up with part of our history, and for those who are not born again or do not know Jesus Christ in the pardon of their sins, you're still someone great. You're still someone special. For our young ladies, you are more than just a plaything. You're more than just someone being used as an incubator. You're more than just a paycheck for some man. For our young men, you are not created to go to prison. That's not part of your purpose. There's nothing wrong with reading and writing well. I don't know if you can remember, but I can remember quite well. Several years ago, there was a question as to whether or not Ebonics was going to be taught in our schools. Because of the broken English of many African Americans, there was actually a question about whether or not Ebonics would be taught in our schools. And I said, my God, how could that have even been a question to lower a standard rather than taking the time to raise the standard? Speaking eloquently, speaking well is not a racial thing. It's not a white thing. It's not an Asian thing. To be able to speak well is just an individual choice that a person makes because they want to present themselves well and they want to invest in their own lives. So we don't have to wear this trauma any longer, is what Touré is saying, because there's such a diverse way of enjoying life from day to day. Continuing on page 10, Touré says different moments presents different situations demanding that we intellectually modulate. The beautiful diversity of blackness is a most remarkable feature, but we continue to quarantine our diversity. And think about it. Think about the people that you are around, for an example, who wants, say, to become a senator, who wants to become a doctor, who wants to become a lawyer, who wants to branch out and establish their own business. If we're not careful, we can, through the words that we speak into that person's life, say something negative that will cause them to doubt whether or not they can achieve these goals that they have set. And it has to do a lot with the fact that we have quarantined our diversity. In other words, isn't it interesting that it's acceptable that the African African American male will grow up, commit a crime, and go to prison. But we call it being white when one of them grow up and become a senator, a congressman, a representative, establish their own business. We can no longer to afford to quarantine our diversity. Isn't that a wonderful thought? That whatever dream it is that you have, you can pursue the dream and you can achieve that dream. It's just a matter of changing self-perception rather than I can't or I'll put it off for a future date, that you start today building on whatever passion, whatever dream it has that you have in your heart, and no longer quarantine your diversity. On page 29, Cornel West made a very impactful statement. He says that the white normative gaze and the black normative gaze are the same. And it's a heavy, invisible chain to lug around your neck. In other words, once we begin to excel in life, it's not going to be a strange thing to expect someone, if you're an African American, someone around you to question your motives. Are you acting white? And it should not be a surprise for a white person to think that you're out of your place. So Cornel West is saying the white normative gaze and the black normative gaze are the same. We're expected to stay in our place. But if you define yourself according to who God says you are, what is your place? Is your place to commit a crime, put a burden on the family, bringing children into the world that you can't afford to take care of, furthering the poverty experience? It appears to me as I look around me that the African American, many, not all, obviously not all, but enough that it is impacting and hurting the race, that we are accepting poverty as our plight, that we are accepting unwed mothers as our plight, that we are accepting fathers to impregnate and to walk away from the mother and the child. So therefore I'm asking, and please answer the question, not to me, but to yourself. Who is defining you? Who is defining you? We no longer have to wear the trauma of our experience around our neck. It was accepted during slavery that men were used as studs. So they would impregnate a woman and then they may go off to another plantation with no bond, oftentimes, to that woman or that child. Oftentimes the women were used as incubators to bring more children into this world as slaves. See, we have to take a look at this stuff because it's so much easier to understand where we're going when we have a clear understanding of where we've been. And please don't be offended by what I am saying. This is all part of our history that we can overcome. Because all of our mindsets that we have and that we accept and we adapt to, it has a lot to do with our indoctrination and the environment that we are in. Think about the depth, the breadth, and the width of the fact that so many young men right now have so little self-esteem, so little self-worth, so little appreciation for life, and they're so angry, their anger is so out of control that they think the way to resolve an issue is to kill or to shoot someone. Then our young girls are working long hours, taking their money and supporting these guys after they get into trouble. Now, someone is saying that's not my business. No, I agree that if that's what someone wants to do with their money and do with their life, that's not my business. My point is that there's a better way. And now that we can have a better understanding of how all of this started, then we can pull ourselves up out of the ditches that we have dug for ourselves and get rid of this invisible chain that we're lugging around our necks. Something else on page 89, you can see I'm jumping around, that Torrey said that I thought was very, very powerful. He refers to the mind virus of black inferiority. He said it seeps in, eroding the value of achievement and self-worth. The mind virus of black inferiority. I can remember, this has been so many, many years ago. This was back in the 50s and 60s, to where the African American male was expected to hold his head down in the presence of a white man. The women had very little to say. And I remember so many times my father would say, hold your head up, and I don't care who it is you're talking to, look them in the eye. That didn't mean a lot to me back then, because we came up so sheltered. Dad was in the service. The service was integrated at that time. And so I did not have backdoor experiences even at my age. At my age, there were people my age were having those backdoor experiences and not able to sit at the lunch counters and that type of thing. That was not my experience because of my personal background. But that did not change the fact that my parents were preparing us for the world that they knew that we were going into. And you know, I would really like to see that more and more, that we would train not to hate, my God, not to hate. We would be no more like an oppressor if we were to hate. But I'm saying to train our children, to train our young people, how important it is for us to hold our head up and for us to build our self-esteem and to overcome this mindset, this virus of black inferiority. We are somebody, and we're someone so great that I get excited when I hear about the success of an African American. And you know, something that is so disturbing, someone will say we don't need affirmative action because look at Oprah, look at Bill Cosby, and we have an African American president. Now, the thing that's so sad about that is there's millions of African Americans, and that was just 3 people. That was 3 people that have made it in America. And let me tell you, it was not easy. I don't know a lot about their story, their history, their background, but I guarantee you, for them to rise up into the ranks that they have, it was not an easy climb. But one of the things that I can say that Torrey mentioned in his book, and that is they learned how to modulate. Can you imagine Barack Obama going into a cabinet meeting talking about, yo, baby, what's up? I mean, he carries himself with dignity, with respect. Can you imagine Oprah using Ebonics and to have gotten where she have been blessed to climb to? It's the same thing with Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby have been really bashed because of some of the statements that he have made that, in my opinion, was the truth. The families have got to come together. And so rather than being offended by some statement that's going to make you better, do it stand to reason that you might want to evaluate and assess and see if there's some truth in it. Because I guarantee you, if there's truth in it, it's going to challenge where you are now. So let's deal with this mind virus of black inferiority. that starting today, you will begin to take a look at how you define yourself. That you will tell yourself every day, not only are you not somebody, but you're someone great, you're someone special. And God has you alive for such a time as this. You have purpose. You have a destiny to fulfill. And whether you realize it or not, there's a life that only you can touch because of your personality and the knowledge that you have. Let me move on. On page 83. What has the mind virus of black inferiority done to the black psyche? A scientific test was given to a group of African American students. Now listen to this. Each student was given a SAT exam. But before giving the test, the second time, the students were subtly reminded of their blackness. Now follow this along. The first time they took the test, their blackness was not mentioned. The second time they took the test, they were subtly reminded of their blackness. Interestingly, the students scored worse on their SAT exam the second time. That is that virus, that mindset that we have grown, adapted to, that we've got to overcome as a people. You know, I'm so excited. I hope that you will tune in next week. I'm going to continue this book for just teaching excerpts from this book for just a little while. It does not matter that it is not February, Black History Month. We can always hear words of exhortation and edification. At the end of the broadcast, I have some underwriters that I would like for you to contact, and if there can be of a service to you, Visionary Solutions Today and Cadillac Realty. They are supporters of this broadcast, and since we're drawing to a close, I would like to remind you of that. I'm so grateful to them, as well as my husband, Jessie Darrough, who also supports this broadcast for me. I hope that you will tune in next week, and until then, if you will just remember that you are a carrier of God's presence. It is up to you and it is up to me to restore the image of Christ on this earth. May God's richest blessings be upon you.
He promised us that He would be a counselor, a mighty God and a Prince of Peace. He promised us that He would be a Father and would love us with a love that would not cease. I tried Him and I found His promises are true. He's everything He said that He would be. The finest words I know could not begin.